And I think he'll remember as someone who was a great footballer, but a better person. Everyone at St Kilda Footy Club walked taller when Danny Frawley was in the room. It's impossible not to like Danny Frawley. So did it work in the end? No. Did we still love him? Absolutely. And I think every player that played under him would say the same thing. I don't think he would have had a bad relationship there.
That ability to break the ice, know when to be serious, know when to have a joke, know when to hang it on someone, know when to laugh at himself. Yep. Not many people like Danny come along.
He was just a ripping guy.
He was a glue in so many different things, and that's I think, the thread of what people are mourning today and celebrating is that he was one of those guys that whatever he did, he made other people better, he made other people feel better about themselves and made the outcome better. And he's just someone who has so many friends, was so loved, and he's a huge loss, clearly to his friends and family, but I think to our industry, our community.
And particularly this Saturday morning at about 7 when my phone won't go with these hopeless tips that he would send through.
Worst tipster ever.
Religiously. I got this one from Hayes. Kieran Maher told me this will win. And then we'd go, righto, so we'd back them all. No good. And then he'd come bouncing in 1-800.
Yes, exactly right.
So how could you? I backed every one of your tips. Oh, no, I got some different ones.
Couldn't he gloat after the event?
This is what's hardest, Jared. It's just so real and live, and my full expectation is that it will happen again this weekend. And and it won't.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Hamish McLaughlin. On behalf of Anita and the entire Frawley family, welcome to a celebration of Danny Frawley's life. Today will be a celebration of a life that achieved so much, that started in Bungaree and reached so many. It's funny, the most nervous I've ever been emceeing involved Danny Frawley. Spud was the CEO of the Coaches Association. It was the Tuesday night of Grand Final Week 2009. Spud had recently taken over the Coaches Association and was keen to reinvigorate the night, make it a big affair. As usual, Spud had no budget. So he asked me to host the night. He knew he could bully me into the role. I didn't want to, but I said yes, because it was Spud. I was nervous. I'd been in the media 15 minutes. All the current senior coaches were there, and all of the assistant coaches. Coaching legends too. Barassi, Parkin, Hafey, Kennedy, Jeans. Spud had assembled all of the heavyweights. It was an intimidating room. Everyone Spud had asked had accepted because that's how Spud was. His enthusiasm and his charisma was infectious. Everyone always just said yes to Spud. I was about to go on stage and interview the 2 grand final coaches of that year, 2009, Bomber Thompson and Ross Lyon. Speaking of intimidating. I was side of stage waiting for a video package to end, and Anita Frawley gave me the nod 20 seconds before I went on stage. And just then, Spud walked over. "What's going on, mate? You nervous?" he asked. "Yeah, I am." "I can see why. Geez, I'm glad it's not me." And he started laughing his trademark cackle. "Ross will give you nothing, nothing." And he kept laughing. "Neither will Bomber. He'll be probably worse than Ross." And the laughter continued until it became a snort, a loud snort. "Thanks, Spud. That really helps." He kept laughing. "Nah, you'll be all right. But whatever you do, just don't muck it up. It'll reflect badly on me." I'd never heard muck pronounced that way. Spud pronounced it much more with an F at the start than an M. We both laughed, but that was Spud. He always had a good line for the moment. No matter how serious the situation, a laugh was Spud's default position. Well, Spud, for what it's worth, there's a few of us nervous today, and we'll all try hard not to muck it up for you this afternoon. Today, the instructions from Anita are to have a laugh, to celebrate Daniel Patrick Frawley's 56 years. So we will. We'll remember a man who spent his life making people feel really good about themselves. We'll celebrate a much-loved son and brother, a loving husband, a caring and adoring father, a ripping mate, a man with a sparkle and a very soft touch, and a wicked sense of humour and a sense of fun, a man who was childish and juvenile and so often idiotic, a man with his own football vernacular, e-massage, head wobbler, golden fist, golden trumpet, a man who was a terrible tip, terrible, but magnetic and caring, a team player, an absolute beauty. And after we've laughed and cried, everyone's invited back to the St Kilda Football Club, a club that Spud helped make better. And we'll see the brilliant old defender do one last lap of honour. Our first speaker is Danny Quinlan, a cousin who grew up on a nearby farm and spent most days with Spud, drafting sheep, digging spuds, kicking the footy, laughing. Britain had the two Ronnies. Bungaree had the two Dannys. Danny Quinlan, Spud's best mate and best man at his wedding, will speak on behalf of the family. Danny.
It is both a privilege and an honour to be here today to be talking about Danny. It is the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life. I've only had got a few minutes to sum up a lifetime of a best mate and a bloke could ever wish for. He was a soulmate, a partner in laughter, sport, family, and so many other things. We were best men at each other's wedding, godparents for each other's children. We've had so many wonderful times together, both growing up in Bungaree and then with Anita, Nikki and the children. Danny has always been there for me, with Nikki, Kane and Cass, and I'll be there for you, Anita, for Chelsea, Danielle and Keely, because that's what he would have expected of me. Danny loved you, Anita, and you loved him. And he adored and was so proud of his three girls. How many times did we hear on the radio, my beautiful wife, Anita, and my three beautiful girls? Girls, the best coaching job he's ever had was coaching you three at Hullbury footy. I think he got more out of that than any other coaching gig he ever had. He loved his mum Shirley and his dad Brian, who passed away a few years ago, as well as his brothers, sisters, his nieces and nephews. Danny and I drove all our families crazy with our laughter and bagging. He would do the jokes and I did the laughing at him. It was an unwritten rule that we never attacked each other, but no one else was safe. There are so many stories and jokes I could tell, but sorry, it's a little bit raw with me right now. He loved his footy, and that's what gave him Melbourne. But there was so much more to Danny than just footy. We had a crack at everything, rowing with mates from Bungaree, swimming in the pier to pub and going to the pub afterwards, playing tennis and doing triathlons. He liked to win at all cost, even if he changed the rules halfway through to suit himself. He was such a competitor. In all our travels, I have never seen him knock back a kid for an autograph, a photo, or a chat with an old fella. He would have done anything for anyone. He helped so many people and touched so many in different ways. I would love you to remember him as you heard him on the radio with Gary and the boys, because they would wind him up and though we would hear the true Danny, he didn't have to act. I haven't got long today to talk about Danny, but I'll be talking about him for the rest of my life. He was a loyal, amazing friend, a proud, loving father and husband, a true sportsman, a comedian, a gentle soul, and under the laughter, the best bloke I know. Give your mates a hug and don't be frightened to talk about the big issues. I'm going to miss our daily phone calls, our big conversations, our sessions of laughing over nothing. Mate, we tried our best. We didn't get it done. I'm going to miss you, mate, so badly, words cannot describe the heartache. I love you, mate. Rest in peace.
Thanks, Danny. Michael Roberts and Spud met at the Saints. They played on the field together for 2 years, against each other for 2 years, and never stopped playing once their careers ended. Golf, cycling and holidays together amounted to hours and hours of talking dross. Whenever I saw Michael Roberts with Spud, I saw a man who had total admiration for the other. Robbo loved Spud. I always thought if Robbo had half a chance, he'd actually like to move in with Anita and Spud. And then I found out recently he'd tried to. But Anita put her foot down because Neats was always the boss. Michael Roberts to speak on behalf of Spud's many friends.
It's indeed an honour to talk a little about Danny and the Frawley family. I was often in Ballarat and Bungaree was part of the visit. The family was big. The old man Brian, a respected district potato farmer, married Shirley, and Danny was one of 6 kids. Christine, Michael, Tony, Anne, Danny and Marita. It would be fair to say they lived in cramped conditions on the farm. Imagine Saturday night, bath night. 1 bath and a load of water. Girls first, then the boys. The eldest straight in, Tony would follow, Danny at the tail end. Picture the colour and the temperature of that dirty water by the time it got around to Spud. He's never known any different. Spud was big on the tooth. He loved food. This dates back to when he was a baby in arms. Brian and Shirley took him to the Maryborough trots. Shirley was breastfeeding him at the time and she ran dry. Question: what do you give a hungry, howling 3-month-old baby in place of milk? Answer: anything available. This day, Spud ate an entire Cornish pasty. No teeth, pasty. Bed space on the family property was in short supply. Danny shared a small room with his brothers, 3 single beds, jammed together, Spud smack bang in the middle. He had great joy in telling me that his bed wasn't made for 15 years because he couldn't separate the beds to tuck the sheets in. Wardrobe space was the same. Spud was developing an untidy lifestyle. Danny came to St Kilda well prepared. He ran up Mount Warrenheip every day, 4Ks each way to give him a fitness base. His brothers, Michael and Tony, played for East Ballarat, and after a good performance, the coach said, "Are there any more home like you?" The boys replied, "There's one younger brother, but he's bloody no good, useless." Little did they know. In the words of his mother, Danny was a good country bloke who treated everyone the same, whether he was a king or a knockabout. Don't count the years, make the years count. That's how we should remember our Spud.
Thanks, Robbo. Nick Revolt recently spoke about the week leading into the game where he levelled Spud as St Kilda's longest-serving captain with 177 games. Spud had held the record since 1995. When a quiet moment arose, Spud mentioned to Nick that, as a sign of respect, Mark Taylor had retired mid-innings when he was level with Sir Donald Bradman's highest test score of 334. Mark Taylor didn't want to pass the great one. Nick knew exactly what Spud was implying. Nick assumed he was joking, but says he left the conversation not completely sure. What is certain is Spud left St Kilda a legend, and the club was much better for having him. Saints teammates and coach Stuart Lowe, Robert Harvey and Ken Sheldon to talk about the St Kilda years.
Today, Rob, Kenny and myself are here to pay tribute to Danny, the footballer, and share with you a small insight into our time spent with him at St Kilda. Stats never really truly tell you the story about a football career, and this is certainly the case with Spud. He was always more than just that. He became not only our captain of the footy club at 23, but our spiritual leader. They say behind every good man there is an equally good woman, and Anita was most definitely that. Both Danny and Anita's influence was enormous, and as usual, Danny would attack everything like a human tornado. From arranging functions to help us all get together, to lifting training standards, funnily enough he was actually a supremely fit athlete, to being front and centre at club fundraisers when our club was almost broke, to mixing with everyone, to organising quiet dinners with the players, or the many trips up to Bungaree to let her hair down, even when I had some. And of course, Anita would always be there by his side, fully in support. They were just an amazing team and cared so much. About 2 years ago, when the Saints decided to move back to Moorabbin and knock down the last remaining grandstand, Spud had this idea of breaking in and grabbing some of the old green timber seats to make something that we could remember out of. The stands were condemned and were about to be demolished, and access was refused to us both. This was never a problem with Spud. He just convinced me that we're always going to be okay, and all I needed to do was turn up with my ute, and he had everything else organised. How many times have we heard that? Unfortunately, when we turned up to Linton Street, the car park was full. The Sandy Dragons were training, and there was at least 40 dads sitting there watching their sons. "No problem," Spud said. "They'll never notice us." We headed up into the derelict stands, and I turned to him and asked him, "Where are our tools?" He just had a blunt saw and a little $2 hammer. I knew that wasn't going to get the job done. A quick trip back to my factory was organised, and of course I returned with a generator and some power tools. We, or rather I, got to work with sparks flying everywhere, and the noise was deafening. Everyone down at ground level was now wondering what the hell's happening, and of course we were busted. "Don't worry," Spud yelled, "I'll take care of them, and I'll start getting the timber down to the ute. You just keep cutting." I can just picture it now. I looked up to see him yelling and screaming as usual, and as he started to throw 5 metre long timber pieces off the top level of the old social club. Our cover was now well and truly blown, and as the whole ground now knew what we were up to, of course Danny was never going to give up. This just goaded him on even more, and we ended up grabbing even more timber. This just sums up Danny. He's impetuous, impulsive, spontaneous, energetic, with a caring, nostalgic, huge heart. Again, that just demonstrated to me just how much St Kilda meant to him. We sat inside that empty grandstand for a while, dirty and sweating, just taking in all the memories for one final time. They were amazing memories, mate. That day will stay with me forever. You left us way too young, mate. I love you. Rest in peace.
Okay. Firstly, to Neat and the girls, on behalf of Danny and our family, our deepest love and support. I can't begin to express how welcome, how loved you guys have made us feel over 30 years of friendship with your family. And when I do say family with the Frawleys, it means the whole family. From Spud's parents, Split and Shirl, his brothers and sisters, to all the James clan, led by Barry and Lowie, and all Anita's brothers and sisters, who we class as really good friends. My appreciation and adoration of Spud started over 30 years ago when I walked into the club as a 16-year-old kid. Spud was our captain and almost immediately started looking out for me almost like a protective big brother. I was overwhelmed and out of my depth early days at the Saints, and Spud just knew by him being him made me how to feel comfortable, a part of it as only he could. I would go to their house most weeks for dinner with my wife Danielle. Safe to say, in the end, we became part of their food bill. We were there nearly every week. And not only did we get a weekly dinner, but it came with entertainment after the birth of their oldest girl, Chelsea. She was like Spud's circus act, singing and dancing for us, cheered on by a proud dad after dinner. In recent years, as Spud was going through his battles, he would say to Lowie and I that he should have been a better captain, he should have been a better teammate, and we just couldn't believe it. He was the best type of captain, the one that you look up to with respect and adoration. A respect and a feeling for a teammate that you don't really see too often, almost a rarity. He knew when to train hard and he knew when to play hard, and it was just a pleasure to be part of both aspects. It was some of my happiest times in footy. He trained like a madman, as Lowie said, and everything he did had to be competitive. Sometimes we'd go for a run together at his holiday house at Port Arlington. It always started off really cruisy, with a bit of banter early on. Then one of us decided we'd click it up a notch, and before you knew it, we were running like madmen. A fierce battle to the finish line. We'd always have sit-up competitions in the gym at St Kilda with Lowie and Granny. It would literally go for hours till someone would eventually break, usually through a verbal barrage from Spud. He brought us together off-field like no other. After nearly every game, Anita and Spud would organise a team dinner for all players and partners. They would always go well into the next morning, always filled with stories and always filled with laughs. Those trips to Ballarat were just stuff of folklore. Some trips I would take the family and we would stay at Split and Shirl's farm or Barry and Lowie's property with all the James clan. We just loved it. Between those two families, it was like they owned Ballarat. Other trips were with the boys, as Lowie said. These trips far more sketchy, almost flashes of events. Once Spud, Fez and Motor got together, well, the rest, as they say, is history. On one occasion, after a big night at the legendary Hot Gossip nightclub, I ended up somehow on Split and Shell's living room floor. My lasting memory is of Split waking me up about 9:30 Sunday morning, shoving a stubby in my hand, saying, "Get that into, young fella, you'll be brand new." I just love those trips so much, and one bloke made all that happen. So rather than wrestle with the despair and the sadness, I'd just rather remember how Spud made us all feel, how he made us laugh, and how he made us much more better for being a part of his world. He was literally one of a kind, the best kind. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Stewie. Danny was very lucky to attract such good mates, and there's an indication of the quality of those mates. There's so many that are in the room, and there's so many that can't be here. He was just... We're here to pay reverence and respect to a great man, a man that we're all proud to have known, very proud to have known. It's come to this, give you the shits while you're standing here, but that's what happens. We're here. This man, when I first met him at St Kilda Football Club in the heat of 1987, Moorabbin, we finished the drill. Doc was the coach, Travis was the president, Muzzer was the team manager. Kids like Harv and Bergie, they were ferrets in nappies. Lowy, you had Barks, Eel, Greg Byrne. You just had some great players. Nicky hadn't arrived yet. He's coming over from Perth, talented Aboriginal boy from South Fremantle. And it started. His first line to me was, "Geez, you go all right, mate." And I said, yeah, you do too. And from there we had a bit of a, he always had a positive support. So to play with Danny, play alongside him in defence, and I'm looking at Jason, I'm just laughing my head off. Second last game of footy, Peter Hudson's out there watching, I'm going to coach the Saints next year. I grabbed the ball on the back flank at Waverley, I flick it across to a leading Danny Frawley, breaking away from Jason Dunstall. I missed it, I miscued it, stuffed it up, hit Jason straight on the tit, and he bounced back and kicked a goal. So many times Danny brings that up. So many times. Stories was just such a part of his life. Every week, every month, whenever it was, you'd be talking to him. He'd talk about the stories, Plugger, Burnsy, all on the way down from Ballarat, the shenanigans they'd get up to, the fun they'd have. He'd talk about the fun. He loved the Kane Taylor motorbike story, and there's one for you to work out when you're having a chat later. Just sensational. We missed training. Bloke come to test run his motorbike and had a test run, all right? He never come back. So Kane was late for training, and Danny never let him forget it. But he did put the mayonnaise and the dressing and everything onto it too. Like he took the jacket and the gloves and everything else, didn't he, Kane? So it was terrific. Danny was a great storyteller. He was a great connection. He was the glue as a teammate. Like, we were a struggling team, but we're on our way up. I was fortunate enough to be accepted into the coaching role of the Saints, and Danny was captain. 9 years he was captain of this great club, and he did an outstanding job. In those times, the first thing that he come up was, "I want inclusivity, Kenny. I want the girls involved." And he sat me down with Anita, and very quickly they'd worked out a plan to have the girls involved. At that stage, that grandstand that Stewie talked about, we put the girls and the families, and we sort of allocated, maybe about half a bay. Anyway, when we did the numbers and we put the Jameses and the Frawleys in it, we had to go 2 bays. So, but that was what it was all about. It was getting people together, inclusive. He was such a vibrant, so much vitality in him, and everybody that he met, he welcomed into the home of the mighty Saints. It didn't matter whether, as the boys said, a little fella or an old lady or an old man. He had time to spend with you. He had time. He was magnificent tactically too, and this later come out with his coaching. he picked up, and the girls, I see great photos, and they were the times of his life coaching the girls to that premiership. But the big one that he learned off Doc, the Darryl Baldock, which all the boys here will understand, is you don't put your head where your ass can fit, and that was a beauty. And the other one that he learned, I reckon, was with Tony Lockett, was, and this is in relation to his girls. I remember him telling me, and they telling me, don't worry about the kicking, girls. I'll teach you that during the week. In the meantime, just get the ball down to Geordie. She'll do the rest. So he was very good. We had to beat Melbourne at the MCG one day. Stewie couldn't play, one of the rare games he missed. And Danny volunteered to play centre-half forward. We had to win to be in the finals in the 1992 season. At the MCG the game was, and then we had a bye the following week prior to the finals. 3/4 time, we're a couple of points down. The 3/4 time speech went like this. Danny, do you reckon you can get everyone out so Plugger can kick 4? Yeah. Plugger, can you kick 4? And before Plugger answered, of course he can. And that was it. And we went on, Plugger did kick 4. Danny played a great role as centre-half forward. And the following week we were able to go and play in our first winning final for so many years. He was an enormous captain, and then I think, and you'll hear about this in a minute, he was an enormous coach. And I'm glad to see you here, Wayne, and others that he spoke so highly of during his time at the Tigers, and certainly his time coaching those ladies, in young ladies at Old Haley. He just loved that. And the Dannyisms that come out, the fun that he just put into it. We'll miss it all. We've got to replace it somehow. I don't know how we're going to do it, but we've got to try and do it, and keep roll up our sleeve and keep punching on. But the one thing that I wanted to leave, and this is on behalf of all my teammates at St Kilda, all the players that I coached at St Kilda, and when I look around too, I reckon I can say this, so all the football heads that are in this room, and you know, he is loved, and we love him so much. We're so proud of what Danny was able to do with his footy. He loved you, Anita. He loved the girls so much. He'd talk about it all the time. We're just so proud, and my wish is that you girls can just be ever so proud of your great dad.
From the Saints to the Tigers. If you speak to anyone who played under Spud at Richmond, they'll tell you they played under a coach they'd do anything for. Speak to anyone who played under Spud at Richmond, and they'll tell you they couldn't read a thing that he wrote on the whiteboard. His text messages, to be honest, are very similar. But Spud took the Tigers from 12th to a prelim final in just 2 years. It was a magic carpet ride. From his Richmond years, Noel Duncan, Brendan Gale, and one of his captains, Wayne Campbell.
Firstly, thank you, Anita, Chelsea, Danielle, Keely, Mrs. Frawley, the Frawley family, for asking us to speak today to celebrate Danny's life. It's truly a great honour. Over the next few minutes, I hope to capture the complexity, the polarity, the depth and the courage that was Daniel Patrick Frawley. Spud loved his quotes, and one of his favourites was from one of Teddy Roosevelt's famous speeches about not being the critic, but being the man in the arena. Spud was the man in the arena and the critic. I met Danny 23 years ago when I was employed to head up the fitness department at the Collingwood Football Club, and Danny was the Pies VFL coach. I was thrown into a small office with Danny, which is the size of a small broom cupboard, and that is where my amazing journey with Danny began. Danny and I are very, very different personality types. He would remind me of this often. Danny is charismatic, funny, the life of the party, and well, I'm not. Despite many of our differences, from day one when we met in the bowels of Victoria Park, for some reason we connected, and I've just been so lucky to have Danny in my life. I'm not sure why we connected, but I think he saw me as a challenge and he took it upon himself to educate me. When I started working for the Pies, I was 27 years of age, and at that time in my life, I didn't realise you could get things for free. Car tyres, runners, golf clubs, bikes, you name it. A lot has been spoken of Spud the larrikin, the media performer, the player, which we all love and adore. But there was a serious Spud, a sensitive Spud, an ambitious Spud. There was so much depth to the man that often doesn't come out in his public persona. From day one, I was drawn to his work ethic, his grit, his loyalty, his competitiveness, his unbelievable generosity, his sense of community, his thirst for knowledge, and his family-first values. He always wanted to get better and improve himself, and he was prepared to work bloody hard for it. Nothing was too difficult for Spud. I admired his dogged determination to develop his computer skills with significant obstacles. He worked on his management and presentation skills, and he was always looking to better himself. He was a sponge for information. I hope he is remembered for these characteristics equally. Spud absolutely loved his coaching. He was made for it because he loved to give, and he loved to help young men, and more recently young women, get better. Spud and his family gave everything to his coaching, and he was bloody good at it. Danny genuinely loved and cared for his players, and he would do anything for them. He did have a little soft spot for some of them, though. Otto and Richo, very hard to split. Gas, Chubba, Wayne, Smacker, Leon, Chaff, Cogs, Crack, the list goes on. And of course his Saints, Pies, Hailbury Girls and Country Victoria players that he coached, and genuinely loved them all. Spud was a man of his word, when it suited him. He used to go for a long run before the game to calm his nerves. As a result, pre-game he would drink a lot of water. It was half-time in a game in the early 2000s, and 3 minutes before half-time siren, nature calls and the big fella couldn't hold on. So he ducks out of the coach's box and has to pop into the public toilet. Up he trundles to the urinal next to a Tigers supporter. "G'day mate, how you going?" Fair to say the Tigers man is a little stunned. "Shouldn't you be coaching?" Yep. "How do you think Dutchie's going?" Spud asked his newfound friend. The supporter still somewhat speechless. "Spud, what do you think we do with him? Do you think we start him on the bench or give him a go at centre-half back?" The supporter says, "Give him a go at centre-half back." "You sure?" Supporter says, "Yep, sure." Spud gets back to the coach's room, puts Dutchie's magnet to centre-half back. Fair to say his trusted and much-loved lieutenants, Darren Crocker, Greg Hutchison and Paul Spargo, weren't as enthusiastic as Spud and his newfound toilet advisor. They put Dutchie's magnet back to centre-half forward. Spud noticed the magnet change and said, "What are you boys doing?" "I've told Knackers in the toilet, Dutchie's starting at centre-half back." "He's starting at centre-half back." Darren, Paul, Greg and Spud's great mate and team manager Mark Opie have a quizzical look at one another. He is a man of his word. As documented, over the last 6 years, Danny has had his battles, but boy did he fight them. We would chat about things, and when he was having a down day, I knew there was one way to change the tone of his voice. And that was to ask him about any one of his friends or his family. Have you spoken to any one of these gentlemen, his Ballarat friends, or his family back home? Anyone I could think of that I knew would give him joy and light him up. But by far the easiest way to change the tone was to ask him about his girls. Wow, was he proud of you, Chelsea, Danielle and Keely. I'm sorry, girls, but your dad was an oversharer and possibly shared too much at times about your lives, and he would talk about you with absolute pride and joy and at great, great length. And of course his rock, his kindred spirit, his best friend and his soulmate, Anita. You and Spud were an amazing team, Anita. I don't think it is possible for a man to love a woman more than Danny loved you. There are just too many things to say. There is too many things to say and too many things to do, and we're all going to miss about Danny. I'll miss him changing his opinion 180 degrees within 30 seconds and then own the change like no other. I'll miss him telling me that he has a way to improve women's footy, country footy, junior footy and he's going to have a coffee with Gil to sort it out. I'll miss him being fixated on the size of people's heads. I'll miss him telling me that Greg Burns was bloody underrated. No, I've never met Greg Burns, but he was underrated. I'll miss him boldly bragging and name-dropping about his playing media celebrity friends. Ran into Eric Banner today. I'll miss him passing himself off as a doctor. I'll miss him asking me, whenever I disagreed with him, how many games did you play, Noel? The answer, if you're wondering, and I can understand your confusion, is 0. I'll miss him being unable to say the words no or goodbye. His substitute for goodbye being, let's get a coffee. I'll miss him calling when he's driving to some country footy club to help out some mate of a mate of a mate. In closing, last week I was reminiscing with Danny's mate, Tony Shaw, and he finished our conversation with, you'd go to war with him. No doubt, Shawry, I'm confident everyone here today would agree with you. Spade, you brought so much joy, so much laughter. Thank you for taking me on part of your journey. I've been so fortunate. If only we could share one more coffee, one more laugh. I love you, mate.
It's an enormous honour to speak on behalf of the players that represented Richmond under Danny during his 5 years as coach. He left a mark on every player who played under him during those years. He coached us to lots of wins and a few more losses, but as the past week has shown, his impact went far beyond the scoreboard. He was a very good coach. In some ways, he was ahead of his time. The attributes of the successful coaches of the past 5 years have been well documented. They formed strong relationships with their players. That was Danny's one wood. We loved him. Even when things didn't work out in the end, there was still a deep respect and admiration for the man. He wore his heart on his sleeve. The new term for that is vulnerability. He took us on a journey filled with fun. He didn't do serious well. He loved laughter and enjoyment. Storytelling has become the modern way to coach. There's been many themes come out since his passing, but surely storytelling sits in the top 3 of Danny's attributes. He could tell you the same story for the 10th time and he'd still have you in hysterics, even if there'd been some dramatic changes to the facts of that story. All of the players from Danny's era have said the same thing over the past week. It was the most enjoyable years we had. He and Anita took us under their wing and took us on a ride. We looked up to him as a coach, but we looked up to he and Anita as a partnership. They came as a couple and brought a family feel to the place. We had lots of functions. It was the Frawley way. Whether it was a day at the races, mystery bus trips, or just dinners at their home in Brighton, laughs were had, memories were made. We had the celebration for Leon Cameron's 250th game at the house as a sit-down dinner. Anita cooked for 100 people that night. Danny provided the booze. For free. He knew a bloke. At the end of most of those nights, I generally found myself sidled up next to Anita. We argued and debated. I knew she was the boss. I knew that she was the source of the information. It will come as no surprise to you all that I lost more debates than I won. In fact, I can't remember ever winning. Sometimes I think I was just about to get the better of her. She'd stop, tilt her head slightly, and just look at me and say, Wayne. And I knew it was time to move on to the next topic. The next morning, I'd write down the things we had discussed and action them on Monday. She was wise counsel. Anita, can I thank you on behalf of all the partners of all the players during Danny's era for everything you did for them. The counsel and support you've given to Sarah over the years has been greatly appreciated. I mentioned to my girls, Molly and Kate, most nights as I tuck them into bed that I only have one goal for them in life. Get scholarships to US colleges like the Frawley girls have done, so Mum and I can come visit you like Danny and Anita do. The lines come thick and fast in the coach's box. It was Danny's way in life, but in the box I think it settled his nerves. The one where he noted that Aaron Fiora's freckle could be so tight right now that you couldn't get a knitting needle up there with a jackhammer is probably the most creative and most repeated. Repeat that to yourself later on. Spud's comedic brilliance came from his ability to turn the ordinary into the extraordinary. You've probably never noticed this, but just before every AFL game starts, while the two teams are completing their warm-ups, the two opposition medical teams come together collegiately just in front of the benches. Spud couldn't have it. As they came together, he'd get started. Have a look at him, would you? Have a look at the Poindexter Convention. What a bunch of nerds. How many years was your degree, mate? 7? Mine was 8. What's your degree, mate? Being a wanker? If one of the doctors dared to be so audacious as to shake the hand of the opposition doctor, it was met with, "Oh, good on you, Chris. Why don't you put your tongue down his throat? Why don't you just pash him, Chris?" I think we've all found solace in the last week listening to a Danny Frawley story. So what is Danny's legacy? Of course, it's his beautiful family, but what is it to the game of football? What can we think about going forward to make the world better, remember Danny at the same time? Can we as a footy industry look after each other just a little more? Don Pike's comments last Thursday are timely, poignant and relevant. Is the game heading down a path we don't want? Are we taking it just a bit too seriously? Does it have to be this extreme? What if just once a week we decided to make something a little more fun, to not take ourselves so seriously, to check in on someone to see how they're going? What if we all did that? The world would be a better place and Spud would be happy. I reckon that's a discussion worth having. And in the spirit of not taking things too seriously, I think we need to ask ourselves a question. Would Spud want Toby to play on Saturday afternoon? I think the answer is yes. Gil, as a St Kilda man, it's over to you. You're a great... Danny, you were courageous in everything you did. You threw yourself in full-chested and eyes wide open. You were in the arena. You're a great friend, as good a leader as there's been, an inspiring mentor, a beautiful father and a wonderful husband. But Spud, from your players, we want you to know you're a bloody good coach. We loved you and we'll miss you.
Thank you. It's my great honour to speak today on behalf of the Richmond Football Club about Danny's impact at Tigerland. At only 36 years when appointed and having only recently retired from playing, we were very mindful of Danny standing in the game as the inspiring skipper of his beloved Saints. It meant there was an almost instant familiarity, which allowed him to be more like a big brother to some and a father to others, apart from simply being the coach. In fact, at no time at all, he became more than the coach of the team. He actually coached the entire club. He embraced and included everyone. Social activities, dinners, morning runs, involving all the staff became commonplace under Spud's watch. Richmond was a fun place to be, and it was united. Danny was a very good coach. He arrived with a clear game plan, supported by rigid team rules. He coached with great clarity, which belied his lively manner, which we occasionally witnessed in some of his notorious coaching box blow-ups. His coaching delivered instant results for a team that had meandered in previous seasons. In 2000, we narrowly missed the finals. In 2001, he coached Richmond to a preliminary final, our first since '95. We were defeated by the eventual premier, the awesome Brisbane Lions. Danny was rightly proud of the progress we'd made and of making it to the prelim. In recent years, when we caught up, he would often lament the fact that in an industry consumed with the preeminence of premiership success, he never felt as though he had the permission to celebrate that achievement. It was an important reflection from a man who recognised the journey was as important as the destination. On the eve of the 2017 Grand Final, he attended an intimate gathering of former coaches and senior officials. We wanted to acknowledge and thank all those selfless club servants who had done the hard yards in previous years, including Danny. And I got the impression he loved that night. He was one of the last to leave, that's for sure. The strength of Danny's coaching wasn't so much in the science as it was in the art. Danny was the quintessential heartbeat of the club. He was open-hearted and he was wholehearted, and his big heart radiated through the whole joint, and we were like moths to a flame. Sport doesn't just build character, it reveals it. And the full extent of Danny's character was revealed and on show every day. Raucous humour to anger, tears to joy, humility to head wobbling. And there was plenty of head wobbling. No one wobbled better than Danny. He was hard-headed at times, but had incredible care and affection. Sometimes he had laser-like focus, other times completely unrestrained. It was this openness, the honesty and the willingness to show up every day that drew us closer and closer. Ultimately, this goes to the very heart of coaching. We loved Danny and we wanted to play for him. Similarly, he was loved by the fans who connect with his honesty and heart and his passion. Danny's other great contribution to Richmond was his family. In so many respects, Danny coached in partnership with his remarkable wife, Anita. Anita was inclusive, composed, capable and strong. She was equally invested in the club, in us as players, our wives, girlfriends and partners, in the club staff. Anita was truly loved. When I reflect upon those times when we were much younger and impressionable, both Anita and Danny were just so big in our lives. Chelsea, Danielle and Keely were only young but already tearing around the place, high-spirited, strongly willed, just like their parents. The Frawley family were all in when they became part of Richmond. Danny was absolutely devoted to his family and he loved them fiercely. And at a time when we were growing up as young men and women and thinking about our own relationships and futures, Danny and Anita set a very powerful example of devotion and commitment and the sense of strength and purpose that comes from family. They set the bar very, very high and still do. The Richmond Football Club has a very rich and proud history. And in his 5 years with us, Danny wrote another extremely rich chapter. He made us proud, he made us competitive, he made us laugh, and last week he made us cry. To Anita, to Chelsea, to Danielle, to Keely, to Brian and to Shirley, thank you for sharing Danny with us at Tigerland. He will loom large in our collective memories forever. Thank you.
Spud's battle with mental health has been well documented. When Danny spoke about it for the first time, people were shocked but alerted to the fact that mental health doesn't discriminate and that everyone was susceptible. Once it was known Spud was in a fight, he became a man that many looked towards as a beacon of hope, a reference point. Wayne Schwass spent many years playing against Danny on the field and then alongside of him in the radio boxes around the country. Wayne's now CEO of Pucker Up, which creates platforms for people to talk about their mental health and their emotional well-being. Welcome, Swatter.
Thanks, Home. To Anita, Chelsea, Keely, Danielle, Shirley, Danny's brothers and sisters and the extended family, I'm terribly sorry for your loss. To Anita, Danielle, Chelsea and Kelsey, thank you for the honour and the privilege to be able to speak today. We live in a world that expects men to be tough, to be strong, to be stoic, resilient, but also unemotional. A world that judges, criticises, labels men who show vulnerability, sensitivity, insecurity, and their emotions. Being emotional as a man is often seen as weak or soft. That somehow you're not a man, you're not man enough, and even good enough. The male mantra, harden up, suck it up, man up, has been handed down from generation to generation, like it's some sort of badge of honour that teaches us from a very early age that to be a man, a real man, you need to be tough. You don't cry, talk, or show your emotions. These messages are damaging and destructive, and in my opinion, are contributing to a growing number of males, from young boys to older men, across our great country who are in pain, hurting, and perhaps paralysed by the suffocating fear of being judged, seen as weak, or losing respect. Some of us choose to stay silent because of fear. The fear of losing everything, even if that means it's at the expense of your own health and well-being. It's a time to challenge the old way, a narrative that no longer serves us. It's not about blame or shame, it's about responsibility and opportunity. To quote Danny, manning up in the past was to suffer in silence. Manning up now is to put your hand up. Fellas, it's okay to be in pain. It's okay to hurt. It's okay to be sad. but it's no longer okay to suffer in silence. If you don't think this is important, that's okay, but I strongly disagree. It's never been more important for our boys, the next generation of men, husbands, fathers, uncles, brothers, coaches, teachers, leaders and future role models, to be allowed, encouraged and supported to be emotionally connected and expressive, to be vulnerable and to be empowered to cry without fear or judgment. It's time for a new narrative. Like Danny, there was a time when I thought I was fixed. I'd beaten my mental health conditions. I used to tell people that I was fixed, cured, and my mental health conditions were behind me. But this implies that I was broken and I needed fixing. I'm not broken, and nor do I need fixing. I'm on a 26-year mental health journey that will continue for the rest of my life, and I'm comfortable with that. You see, my health and well-being is ultimately my responsibility. It's up to me to stay healthy and well. There's a reason why I no longer drink alcohol. There's a reason why I exercise. There's a reason why I prioritise sleep. There's a reason why I try to eat well. There's a reason why I see my GP regularly. There's a reason why I'm engaged and constantly talking to my support network. And when necessary, there's a reason why I take medication. Those reasons are all the same, because my mental health and well-being depends on it. If I don't do the things I need to do every day, then ultimately I will pay a price. My mental health suffers, and it's simply not worth that. It's a daily responsibility and a commitment to my ongoing mental health and well-being. So to anyone here today who has or who is living with a mental health condition, I want to encourage you to make a similar commitment to your mental health and well-being. Please don't compromise your mental health. Please put your well-being first. Please eliminate the things that don't help you. Please start investing in the things that are good for you and your mental health. Please, please, please follow the advice of your GP and your clinicians. Invest the time into your recovery. And even when you think you've recovered, please keep investing, keep working, keep learning new tools and strategies that help your mental health. Mental health conditions are insidious and invasive. And a life with mental health conditions can be difficult, very challenging, exhausting, and at times completely overwhelming. But life can be great again. You can get healthy again, happy again, and the colour can and does come back into your life. But it takes hard work, perseverance, and a lot of patience. To anyone here today who has or is supporting a loved one living with a mental health condition, it can be a thankless task at times. But I want to thank you. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for being there in our darkest moments. Thank you for being there when we fall over. Thank you for picking us up. Thank you for not losing hope. And thank you for keeping us connected. Daniel Patrick Frawley, aka Spud, was known and respected for his courage he displayed on a football field. But courage comes in many forms, and it was his courage to fight his own mental health conditions, using those experiences to share his own journey in the help of removing stigma and encouraging others going through similar experiences to ask for help that I admired most. Even in his darkest days in recent weeks, he was still championing his message that no man should ever walk alone, that you don't have to suffer in silence, and that you should ask for help. That's courage, that's strength, that's selflessness from the ultimate team man and teammate. Spud, you were a beautiful man who I cared about deeply. You were a great mate who I unashamedly loved. You were and always be a loyal, loving, supportive and encouraging friend who I will love forever. I'll miss our chats, our deep conversations, the practical jokes, your infectious laugh, your spirit and your passion. I'm so proud of you, Spud. I'm proud of how hard you fought. I'm proud of how hard you worked to overcome these insidious conditions the first time around. And I'm incredibly proud of you for helping countless others. We may have lost this battle, Spud, but my promise to you, Anita, and your 3 beautiful girls is we won't lose the war. There are 2 things that I will cherish most, Spud. The first was your love. Whether it was an emoji love heart at the end of a text or you saying I love you, Swatter, at the end of one of our many phone calls. And the second was your trust. You trusted me to listen. You trusted me to talk. You trusted me to ask for help. You trusted me to allow me to offer my support. Spud, what I'd give to just have one more conversation, brother. I tell you like I always did. It's okay, mate. We've been here before. We'll get through this together and we'll do it again. I believe in you, brother, so let's keep doing the work. But until then, my beautiful friend, you're free to fly with the angels. I love you, Spud.
Thanks, Swatter. Wonderful words, such an important message. From a career perspective, as a footballer, Spud was first class. As a coach, he was loved and successful. But as a media performer, Spud flourished. To spend a day in the commentary box with Spud was an absolute joy. When you called with Spud, it felt like you were either in a rowdy sports bar, watching on at the comedy festival, or part of a circus with no safety nets, uncaged lions, certainly no insurance and no ringmaster. When Spud was on, what went to air was always great listening. What was discussed in the ad breaks and what didn't go to air was often much better. To speak about a man who will be sorely missed from our radios and our screens, 3 men who were made to look a lot better by Spud's presence and in turn helped Spud shine. Gary Lyon, Damien Barrett, Jason Dunstall.
That's bullshit, Hammer. We made him look good. 0418554194. It's the only mobile phone that I can recall off the top of my mind, and that was Spud's number. And the reason I can remember it is, and I'm going to leave these 2 boys to do the media route, is that I first got to know Spud about 30 years ago. We worked together full-time work, being a loose term, at the AFL in the promotions and junior development area, as Gavin Brown and myself joined Spud, who'd been there a couple of years. And he was the old wise head. And we used to go out and do clinics and go up the country every couple of weeks. And after 6 months, Spud decided that we were that high powered that we needed mobile phones. This is in the early 90s. So we got car phones, and my number was 0418554193 and his was 0418554194. I think Rowdy's might have been 195, I'm not sure. Gavin was the sensible one. So Spud loved that phone. He loved his mobile phone. I was in the car though. And the amount of times we'd finish a clinic and he'd ring and we'd just talk shit for however long. And after about 6 months, he decided he needed to be more mobile. So he said, we've got to get ones where we can walk around with them. So Gavin and I just said, yeah, fair enough. And he organised the ones, a brick. And he'd strap it on the side of his tracksuit pants, pulled up too high with a fierce moose knuckle happening, and he'd walk around with this mobile phone, and I'd be sitting there and my phone would go off. And I'd pick it up and say hello, and he'd say, how do you reckon the drill's going? I say, Spud, you're 50 metres away. He was obsessed with the foam. And he was our leader at this time at the AFL, and we had so much fun. We had so much fun doing that job. I mean, doing clinics was shit house, but look at all the other stuff was great. And we lasted 6 or 7 years. I would have lasted 6 or 7 months had it not been for him. And we just laughed every single day. And every week we're at risk of being sacked. There's no question about that. He was our leader and we followed. Rowdy was the proper one. I encouraged him a fair bit. And the reason we didn't is he had what I term this beautiful irreverence. His ability to get out of trouble was legendary. And one day we were playing cricket, wasn't all that busy this particular week, the AFL, and he said, come on, we'll go and have a game of cricket outside. We're at the MCG, our offices, so we're making a hell of a racket playing cricket. And this door opened and out came Ross Oakley, who was the CEO. And Gavin and I were horrified. We were absolutely going to get the arse. And Spud looked and we looked at him for a lead and he said, come on, Ross, have a bowl. Threw the ball to Ross. Come on, show us what you got, Rossi. Come on, Rossi. So Ross took his jacket off and started having a bowl. Awful bowler, like John Howard. So after a while, Spud realised that he was taking away a lot of our fun. So he said, right, Rossi, you must have a meeting on or something. Off you go, Roscoe, off you go. Had this beautiful ability to swing things around. And we survived as a result of it. It was this, as I said, it was a beautiful irreverence. The other thing he was an unbelievable competitor. And the St Kilda boys that are here and all of these guys here, Kenny Sheldon, he was as competitive as any man I've ever known. I wasn't going to tell a story, but I will very quickly, because I know there's a large harness racing fraternity here and he loved the trots. He loved the trots. His family, great trotting family, my old man, and we were into the trots as well, so we had this common ground. And the Bendigo Trotting Club said to us one day, would you come up and drive in this charitable trotting race? And I'd driven most of my life, and Spud obviously hadn't. And said, yeah, no worries, no worries. So we went up to Bendigo on a Sunday, and my uncle bought one of his horses for me to drive. Rob Gaylard was in the race. There was I think it was Ballarat media identity, and then an American basketballer who had no idea in this trotting race. And Spud didn't have a horse. So they said, we'll get one of the local Bendigo trainers. So this beautiful, beautiful older man, would have been in his mid-70s, bought his Pride and Joy horse that had, I think, nearly been retired. And he said, here, Spud, just look after him. Spud said, give it here. He said, just take it easy. And we sat down and they had a meeting. They said, right, you just got to be very, very careful, you people. And we said, yeah, no worries. He said, nothing silly, no whips, nothing, just, drive, have a bit of fun and it'll be good. And we said, beautiful. So the race started. Rob Gaylard went to the front. I was sitting tightly behind him. The American was behind me and Spud was out the back on this beautiful old man's beautiful horse. You'd never seen a nicer horse. Anyway, it all went nicely for a lap and a half, and down the back straight, though, things started to get up a little bit competitive. So the American, who didn't know what he's doing, pulled his horse out and started to make a move, and of course it got in the road of Spud, and Spud just said, piss off, get out of the road! So he just steered his trotter off to the side, and then Spud come flying round past me, and he's laughing, he's got that crazy look in his eye where, Jesus, don't go near him. And halfway down the straight, he's pulled the whip from his pants and caned this poor horse to within an inch of its life down the straight. And of course he got done by a short half head. And he came back to scale to this crestfallen, beautiful old man who's just slumped and tears are rolling down his face. And Spud handed him the horse, just threw the reins at him and said, needed the run, mate. And that's what he was like. What has been really obvious, and is from the day I've met him, is he loved his mates, Spud. He's a great man's man. He loved his mates. He loved his Bungaree mates. We were forever hearing about stories from his youth. He loved his St Kilda mates. We were sick to death of hearing about Lowy and Banger and Plugger. He loved his mates at Fox and Triple M and SEN. He loved his bike riding and he loved all his mates in the horse fraternity. But what I want to make sure, and I don't think it needs to be said, but he loved those boys, but he loved his girls more than anything. I've never seen her father prouder, or her husband more proud of his girls and their achievements and their accomplishments. And to Anita and Chelsea and Danielle and Keely, he was an oversharer. We know more about you than you would care to know. And we have taken upon ourselves, girls, to make sure we will vet all boyfriends. Angus Brayshaw, you're in the gun. You will face up to us, well, me and Chief. Warrior, not so much. And we'll make sure that we look after you. We loved him, but he loved you girls most. Thank you.
I'm actually standing here right now with this weird sense of Spud looking down with one of his stupid smiles, and I reckon I got to know him well enough to know that he'd actually want me now to muck this up. In fact, he'd be hoping I'd muck it up, and no matter what I do in the next couple of minutes, I also know that he'd tell me at the end of it that I'd managed to put a glass eye to sleep, because that was one of his favourite media sayings. It became my favourite of his favourite media sayings. Fair dinkum, mate, you could put a glass eye to sleep. And it was a phrase that he used every single week on Saturday Triple M, whether it was on air or off air, it was used every single week. And that media part of Spud's life, it was an absolute tornado. It was madness, it was chaotic, it was childish, and that's a word that's come out a few times today. It was frustrating, it was problem-causing, but it was genuinely funny. It was never, ever boring, and it was absolutely as highly successful as any media person has achieved. And I thought I'd just highlight here today, in the few minutes I've got, the Saturday component to Spud's media life. We were on air at Triple M at midday. We'd always meet at 11:30. And Spud's phone calls would start before 7. And even on a quiet Saturday, I'd have 4 calls by 8 a.m. On a busy Saturday morning, in Spud's world, there are a lot of busy Saturday mornings, there'd be 10 phone calls before that 11:30 meeting. And I'm not exaggerating that. Every single thought he had about that day's radio had to be relayed on the spot and in that moment. And the other members of the Saturday team, Jim, Gaz, BT and myself, we never really felt the need to talk until that 11:30 meeting. But on the rare times that we did, each one of those conversations would begin with, how many today? As in, how many times has Spud rung? And by the time we tallied it all up, it would sometimes be above 50 by the time we got to the 11:30 meeting. We'd roll up to the ground, the games would continue. No one could look anyone in the eye because one of us was about to be ambushed by him and no one knew exactly who was going to be on that given day. But in those pre-show moments, there was always a regular go-to topic, and it was often Spud's attire. And there actually wasn't too much wrong with what he did wear to the ground each week. But Jim often would just try to break down his... he's self-conscious at that moment and go to the fact that he might have actually had a penchant to wear the jeans just a little bit too high, or to wear a T-shirt that might have been too tight and more suited to a 22-year-old. It'd just take him off his game, the self-consciousness would kick in, and then the headsets and the mics would go on and no one would have any idea of what he and we were about to do next. And that was actually the true genius of Spud. He'd get us all worked up, and then it simply didn't matter if his plans worked, because he knew that if it didn't work, it was actually often better radio. He genuinely cared about what he did in the media. He worked very, very hard at his media, and he was absolutely outstanding at it. And we'd joke with him, and he'd joke along with us, how he had missed the teams of the century at both the Saints and Bungaree. But I reckon he'd be co-captain with Lou Richards in the all-time football media entertainment all-stars. He didn't just care about the media that he worked in, he genuinely cared for his friends that he made in it, and he was the absolute glue to our particular group. Me brand is flying. Me brand is flying. He would say it every week on and off air. And Spud, your brand always will be flying.
so many great speeches, I think we're getting a pretty clear idea of what the man was about. There's a sense of great devastation when you lose a close mate, but I can't even begin to understand what it must be like for Anita and Chelsea and Danielle and Keely and the entire family, and everything I have in my heart goes out to you. Spud and I first met as opponents back in 1985, a relationship that could be described as cordial at best. Yes, there was a healthy respect, but let's be honest, his primary focus was to punch holes in the back of my head. And he was very, very good at it. You could actually hear him sniggering behind you when he'd got a good one in. I never thought our lives would become so entwined further down the line. It's impossible to sum him up in just a few minutes, and I would never even try. I thought I'd just give you an example of one of his many amazing traits. He was the most magnificent partner in crime that you could ever wish for. Working in TV and radio, like his football, it was always team first. So much passion, and of course he loved to laugh. He did whatever the show needed, making others look better, and he genuinely did make others look better, and it was more often than not by throwing himself under the bus. And I'll give you a perfect example. We did a show together called Bounce, and on that show we did sporting challenges. And we decided to head up to Mount Buller to do a ski challenge. So we got up there the night before and thought it only fair that we should have a few quiet drinks before the following day's action. At 2:30 a.m, as Spud was doing push-ups on the bar, I thought it was probably a good time to call it a night. So the next day we're out on the slopes, we're a little bit dusty, we're trying to put the challenge together and it just wasn't quite working. It was a little bit bland. We couldn't find that comedic element that we were looking for. And as it so often did, the light bulb went off above Spud's head. He goes, "Chief, do a bit to camera. Start in 5 minutes and I'll come skiing into the background." No worries, he takes off, he gets the lift up. We're there on the slope and I wait 5 minutes and I start doing a piece to camera. And it wasn't long before Spud comes screaming into the picture. His skis go straight up in the air and he slides straight into the bushes behind us, where he became hopelessly and completely tangled. And he just looked back at the camera with that stupid look he gets on his face so often. Anything for a laugh. Of course, I'm assuming it was deliberate that he skied into the bushes, because his sporting prowess outside the realms of football was highly questionable, to say the least. He wasn't a huge fan of political correctness, never really bothered him. He called a spade a spade. That was just part of his charm. Mind you, charm and spud are two words that should probably never be used together in the same sentence. I think Haim used it before, the perfect word. He was magnetic, because you just wanted to be around him. I loved working with him. I loved his company. I just loved him. Rest in peace, mate.
Swatter said it, what you'd give for one last chat with him, just so you'd hear him say when he picked up the phone, "What's going on, mate?" Whenever you rang Spud, you're in a win-win situation. He'd either pick up, you'd have a great chat, or he didn't. And that's when you got his message bank, which was a treat in itself. For years it was, "You've runged Danny Frawley. You've runged Danny Frawley." Every time I heard the mangulation of the English language, I would smile. I challenged Spud on his message bank once. I said, "Spud, how many D's in "you've runged Danny Frawley"?" He said, "I don't know, but there's not many and I'm going to snap your scrawny little neck." We left it at that. And then one day, he changed his message bank, and that was a sad day. So, we've come to the end. We're about to finish with a video tribute that Spud and his great mate, Peter Dixon has put together. And when it's done, Neats and Spud's 3 beautiful girls will leave first and head to Linton Street for a lap of honour. You're all welcome. So Spud, the town hall is overflowing. Moorabbin's heaving once again. And everyone's here for you. Because everyone loved you. Everyone always did. Everyone always will. And you really should know that. You should. Rest in peace.
To your football? You see Excelsior on the camera. No, you can't do that. Show them your back, number 2. Turn around, Chelsea. Turn around. Number 2.
Daniel Patrick Frawley, born 8th of September 1963. Who was Danny Frawley? He was larger than life. He was the country kid. He was a footballer. He was our skipper. He was a coach. He was a spud farmer, a media personality. He was a husband. He was a dad. He was a brother. He was a friend to many. And he was one of my best mates. And he will always be my hero.
Met your wife, your love of your life, at the races.
Yeah, Avoca Cup. Admire and Anita and her father won the Avoca Cup. And
Barry James.
Barry James. And backed the horse. And then back the real winner after the cup. So that was very good, Ross. She's a beautiful girl, and I'm very lucky.
We were just best mates. I think I was about 19 or 20 something, and went out to the car, and he sat in the car with me. I reckon it was 3 hours. 3 hours sitting there. And we were just sitting there talking to each other. I knew what was going to happen. And finally, he jumped across and he went like this and kissed me, and then got out of the car and ran 100 miles an hour into the house. So he was just nervous. He was just like a big goop, honestly. That raw honesty. And he was just so cute.
What's so good about this lifestyle?
Oh, well, you haven't got the hustle and bustle of the city.
Yeah.
And you got the fresh air out here.
It was when we were on our honeymoon, again. And this is Danny, because he just got awkward. So I came out of the bathroom in the black negligee, beautiful black matching, the gown top thing they had. And I've looked over and he's looked at me and goes, Superwoman. Superwoman! You are Superwoman though, Mum. Yeah, so romantic.
It up for Kappa against Frawley. Kappa, Frawley too strong and too good.
St Kilda defence under enormous pressure. Frawley will clear. They're being besieged, the Saints, at the moment. Well played, Frawley.
Brereton is there. Frawley, who's done a great job, knocks it away.
It kicks it long. Who's read it best? Danny Frawley's read it best. Comes out, marks on his chest at half-back.
On the punt, would you rather win $1,000 or almost win $100,000? Almost win. Yes! You passed. You passed. You passed the exam.
He was a fun magnet. His radio stuff with us early days, the Triple M rub stuff was, we sort of thought that was when he was at his best and happiest. That and you know, with Jace on the bounce.
Righto. For those Paul Hogan fans, remember Leo Winker? Unfortunately, we don't get the motion of that. But Gaz, I've got to ask you this.
Oh, no.
If it's not about you, what the bloody is it about? It's all about me. Me. If that's not the wobble of the year.
That's as funny as you've ever delivered, I reckon.
With Danny, the life experiences for us as a family were what it was all about. So really didn't care. It was just about the time together. So we were very, very fortunate that we could have these wonderful holidays. And
every holiday was an absolute laugh. It was actually the Griswolds. Like it was. If you watch that movie, our family was exactly the same, but probably worse. I remember the Swiss ski Alps, and Dad didn't have chains on his skates. We start slipping a little bit on the edge of a mountain, like no word of a lie. He goes, "Oh my God, girls, we're all gonna die. Everyone get out of the car, we're all gonna die."
We always had a near-death experience pretty much every holiday. Hamilton Island, Mum and I were sitting at the front of the boat on the catamaran, and the waves started picking up, and we were on the front, on the netting bit, going, woo! Woo! Next minute, Dad pulls the sail out, has never done sailing before in his life, and we've literally just gone through the water, and Mum and I were like, run to the back of the boat.
Mind you, we had an 8-hour briefing.
He'd have this face when he got in trouble, like Dad, did you clean? Did you do the dishes? You were supposed to do the dishes. Did you do them? And he'd just turn around and go.
You'd come down. Dad was eating chips. He had crumbs on his chest, eating his Smith's salt vinegar, and when he'd just be up there, just eating his crumbs off his chest.
I'm like, what have I walked into? I think with Dad as well, we always knew that if Mum said no to something, that he would always say yes.
I don't think I ever went to Mum to ask for something. I always just went to Dad. Every time there's, obviously in a movie, there's some sexual scenes, we'd watch them and he'd go, tea towel, girls, tea towel.
And sometimes he'd grab a tea towel and put it over our eyes.
Even when we were 26.
Tea towel.
Still do the same. I think every time it made you feel so awkward.
Well, he'd just pop his head around the corner and go, hello. Hello.
He had a nickname for everyone. Like, there's not one person where he didn't have a nickname for. This guy will know, I think he works for St Kilda, and he obviously called him it, because I went there one time. He has hair, but you can see his scalp, and it's a bit like that, and he'd go, "G'day, feathers." And every time someone looked like they had a wig on, he'd go, "Look at that rug."
Every time Dad would call someone, he'd never say hello. He'd call them by their nickname and go, "Oh, Cutlets, what's up, what's going on?" And then he'd also he'd either hang up halfway through the call and he'd pocket dial you 10 minutes later and you'd hear his whole conversation for the next 10 minutes, or he'd always end on like, grab a coffee. We'll grab a coffee next week. It's as if he could never say goodbye, and I guess in a way it's we don't want to say goodbye, it's just
see you later.
See you later.
I can just remember the one thing that all through our lives that we tried to do, if we walked into a room, we always had eye contact. I said, wherever we are, we just need to have eye contact so we look after each other.
Where'd you get the from?
I had it in the cabinet.
Oh, bullshit.
I had.
You have more than that before?
We were just a team. We were just best friends. An amazing team together. We just laughed and had fun.
The support you need is, you need to have someone with a really good balance. Anita's been a terrific wife, but a very good mother.
The thing that I thought would be hard, and has been hard, is to miss that clubland, that feeling of the mateship, which you can't really replicate from playing and coaching, which I think is really sad for anyone that's coached or played.
When it's all boiled down, when you look at Danny Frawley's DNA, there's probably a line there. If he didn't have a structure, he'd be quite affable and more a brother than a father figure. I think you've always got to fight with that if you've got that in your DNA, and that was a part of my strengths, but it was also my weaknesses.
And that's one thing we look back on. He just lost his personality. He was Mr. Serious.
How long did it take to get back?
Not long. Not long, a couple of months,
He was a great dad and just a great husband. He just absolutely loved his girls. I think what we've been discussing the last few days is
He was a real Peter Pan.
Yeah, he was.
There was a real side to him like that was just
the king of the kids.
He was my absolute idol, and I know he's my dad, but he was also my best friend. And I don't think many daughters actually can have that relationship with their parents. He's not really gone. Like, you know, I can just look in the mirror and see him in me, and I can just walk down the street and just think it's Danny because I have a Shrek walk. And I think that pigeon toe. Like, every time he'd walk into a room, he'd go, "G'day, kickers," and he would never just walk by and not notice you. He would always notice you, and he'd always come in and say, "I love you to the moon and back, Danielle." And you'd always hug for a bit too long. Yeah. But I just wish that he was here now so he could give me one of those really awkwardly long hugs.
I had a thick skin, but at times it became a bit of rice paper, to be brutally honest. You know, mental toughness in the past was to suffer in silence. Manning up now is to put your hand up. Looking back, I probably had bits of depression all the way through. There was always a little bit of a chip on the shoulder, and always wanted to be a premiership player, premiership coach, always wanted to be the number one in the media and wanted to do this and wanted to be a great administrator, but you couldn't do everything. You know, looking back, it really did make me reflect, and I thought, I'm really battling here.
Mental illness is just so tough. It's tough on them, it's tough on the families. And I think the one thing that people aren't aware of is Danny was suffering again, but he was suffering because bulletproof Danny decided in January that he thought he was all fine because he was fantastic. And I don't need medication anymore, I don't need to do anything. You know, changed his course. You know, he just had so much to look forward to, and mental illness is just such a tough thing, and it's so common, and he fought so hard for it, so hard.
Helped so many people.
Helped so many people. And then bulletproof Dan. There is no blame. Everyone loved him. Everyone did everything they could, including all of us. The mistake Danny made was 8 months ago. He went off that medication. I'm so proud that he's my father. So proud. I hope you're up there, Dad, looking down and seeing how much everyone loves you. Yeah. Thank you. We're going to give him a hell of a send-off. I know that much for sure. He deserves it.
Yeah.